بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ألهمنا مراشد أمورنا وأعذنا من شرور أنفسنا. At the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah, Almighty Allah indicated towards the people around Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wassalam and an error that they had made in asking for something which was not appropriate, especially after seeing so many miracles around Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. Now to look for another miracle with which the heart would become mutma'in. In Surah An'am, Almighty Allah now explains that if a person has within him what is known as an eye that sees the favors of Almighty Allah, then he will not need to ask for miracles. He will not need to ask for mighty and big things. He will be able to see Almighty Allah. He will find itminan of his qalb, contentment of the heart. He will find the azmat and the awe of Almighty Allah in everything around him. In the skies he will look, that itself will be for him a miracle. In the earth it will be a miracle. In his own body it will be a miracle. Suratul An'am, the word An'am is referring to the animals that are around him. In that also he will find the qudrat of Almighty Allah. Every and each and everything within him and around him, everything will make the call towards La ilaha illallah. He will not have to ask for anything. Everything will be in front of him. But that this person will enjoy who walks on the Sirat-e-Mustaqim. But he does not walk with that shan as though I am in charge of this path, but rather with this fear that when so many others got pushed off this path, and I understand from my side I had not done anything to make me, to allow me to enter onto this path. It was nothing but the kindness of my Allah He allowed me. With that quality of abdiyat, that I am the least deserving to walk on this path. When an individual then treads on this path, his tongue will never ask in a manner that I want this and I need that to keep me strong on this path. And when difficulties come in the path, then he will not be like the Bani Israel, where they would say, you and your Allah go and remove the difficulty. He will understand that Almighty Allah doesn't need him on the path. It is an honor for him to walk against the difficulty. If he dies while trying to fight the difficulty, he dies for the pleasure of Allah. And if he lives and survives through it, he survives in the pleasure of Allah. Suratul An'am starts with this, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah means all praise is for Allah. All praise is for Allah means whatever you see around you, everything is pointing towards Allah. Everything around is a miracle. الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The one who made the heavens, the one who made the earth, that's a miracle. The movement of the sun and the moon is a miracle. The coming of the rain is a miracle. The sprouting of the things from the ground is a miracle, which will be mentioned at the end of this juz. وَجَعَلَ الظُّلُمَاتِ وَالنُّورِ. Darkness and light is a miracle. Darkness, this physical darkness that we see, physical light that we see, spiritual darkness that we see, spiritual light that we see. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ, the word thumma here will mean, after so many miraculous doings that are happening around man, ثُمَّ, then too, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ يَعْدِلُونَ. You will find the kuffar, they are still establishing some partner with Almighty Allah. No one was responsible for the creator of heavens, for the creation of the earth, for the making of darkness, for the making of light. So who was going to be this partner? And who was making this partner? Allah Ta'ala says that very man, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن طِينٍ ثُمَّ قَضَى أَجَلًا. That man who Allah made him from sand. He understands his being. It was nothing. It got wujud. He never asked for it. He never pressed any button. He knows no one in the hospital did anything. No doctor did anything. He was created from sand. Almighty Allah gave him chance in this world. وَأَجَلٌ مُسَمًّى عِنْدَهُ. And he also knows that when the time comes to leave this world, no doctor will help me, no lawyer will help me,
no system will help me. Knowing he came without anyone's help, and knowing that when he goes, no one will be able to help him, you would have understood that man to remain from the beginning till the ending as the abd, as the slave of Allah. But it's not like that. Almighty Allah says, ثُمَّ أَنْتُمْ تَمْتَرُونَ. Still they have shak in this matter. Still they are showing doubt. Still they are asking, I want to see some miracle. وَهُوَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ. It is Allah alone in the heavens, responsible for the doings of everything. وَفِي الْأَرْضِ. It is Allah alone who sees to the doings of the earth. If you want to see Allah, يَعْلَمُ سِرَّكُمْ وَجَهَرَكُمْ. He knows what you are hiding, what you are keeping secret. He knows what you are saying loudly. He knows whatever you have acquired, whatever you earn. وَمَا تَأْتِيهِمْ مِنْ آيَةٍ مِنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ. There are two people who would have come to the beginning of this path. One is that one who got a very high attitude. He wants only what he wants. Such a person, Almighty Allah says, whatever sign we will bring him, إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. He will say, not enough, I want something more. He will turn. فَقَدْ كَذَّبُوا بِالْحَقِّ لَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ. When the truth came in front of them, undeniable, there was no way they could close an eye. Almighty Allah said, even that they denied. When they saw mighty, mighty miracles, they did not accept. Where will they accept any? فَسَوْفَ يَأْتِيهِمْ أَنْبَاءُ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. A time will come to them that which they would mock about, that which they would laugh about, that which they would criticize, that which they would ask for, I want to see a proof, a dalil for this. The end result of this, the real khabar of this will one day come. أَلَمْ يَرَوْا كَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ مِنْ قَرْنٍ. Almighty Allah says, have they not seen that before them there were many nations? مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. How strong we had made them in the earth. مَا لَمْ نُمَكِّنْ لَكُمْ. We did not give you such strength like them. وَأَرْسَلْنَا السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِدْرَارًا. The waters from the heavens would rain upon them. They had the best and the most lush of lands. They had the mightiest and the biggest of houses. Their bodies were like steel. وَجَعَلْنَا الْأَنْهَارَ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهِمْ. They had rivers as though it was a paradise, flowing under their gardens. فَأَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. When our decision came, we destroyed them on account of their sin. وَأَنْشَأْنَا مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ قَرْنًا آخَرِينَ. And then another nation we brought about. One will go, one will come, one will go, one will come. Fortunate was that man who walked on this path in a manner that Allah Ta'ala allowed him to reach the ending. Otherwise, mighty, mighty, strong and wealthy nations came. Wealth did not mean anything on this path. Health did not mean anything. Intelligence did not mean anything. Being mighty and bold did not mean anything. All of them, Almighty Allah pushed off this path. وَلَوْ نَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ كِتَابًا فِي قِرْطَاسٍ. Almighty Allah says, what miracle do they want? Even if we have to send to you a book, فَلَمَسُوهُ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ, and it is put in their hands, hold on to this. This is the book that came from Allah. لَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Then also they will have something to say. They will say, this is nothing but magic. وَقَالُوا. And they say, why can't an angel come? We want an angel, we don't want a Nabi. Almighty Allah says, say to them, they must be happy what Allah gives. Why is it their nature? They always want something else. وَلَوْ أَنزَلْنَا مَلَكًا. If we had to send an angel, then let them understand, لَقُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ. With the coming of the angel, if they did not understand, it would be one decision and the matter would have been come to an end. ثُمَّ لَا يُنْظَرُونَ. Muhlat, grace would not have been given to anyone. And even if it had to be an angel, وَلَوْ جَعَلْنَاهُ مَلَكًا. If it had to be an angel, does the eye of man have the ability to see the angel in his original form? لَجَعَلْنَاهُ رَجُلًا. That angel would have taken the form of man. وَلَلَبَسْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ. And then same thing, it would have been a confusing matter for them. وَلَقَدِ اسْتُهْزِيَ بِرُسُلٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ. If they just want to laugh, they want to mock, if they are not happy with the signs that we have given them, Almighty Allah says, indeed, previous Anbiya, alayhimus salatu wassalam, were also mocked. They mocked Nabi Musa alayhi salam, but what miracles he came with. He brought an end to the Firaun. The very people who saw the destruction of the Firaun, Bani Israel, they would laugh at Nabi Musa alayhi salam. They laughed and they mocked at Nabi Isa alayhi salam. They mocked at Nabi Dawood alayhi salam. They mocked at Sulaiman alayhi salam. Did their mocking help them in any manner? فَحَاقَ بِالَّذِينَ سَخِرُوا مِنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. It was their very mockery that became their punishment, and it surrounded them. قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Say to man, travel in the earth. ثُمَّ انظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. Go out in the world and look for the results of those that were not ready to accept the truth. How they falsified, but today there is no sound of them in the world. If a man is going to talk loud on the spot will not keep him. Almighty Allah then speaks about a man who really walked on the spot, what the greatest of what was called the sifat of abdiyat, what the greatest of the sifat of Islam, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. He did not have what these people are asking for. He did not have an environment that showed him and explained to him the dalail of the qudrat of Almighty Allah. He was one who was rather born in the house of one who used to make idols. Idols for them was not only a god. Idol for that family was their source of sustenance. If people in the village were not going to worship the idol, they would not pay his father. That idol for them, not only was it a god, it was their sustenance. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ. But when Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, Almighty Allah says, remember, when he said to his father, أَتَتَّخِذُ أَصْنَامًا آلِهَةً. That, oh my father, I see you making this. The very thing you're making, are you making that a deity? إِنِّي أَرَاكَ وَقَوْمَكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. He said, I find you and my entire nation. What was that gave Ibrahim alayhi salam that quwwat of iman? Which miracle did he see at that time? Everything around him was against him. Everything around him was inviting towards idol worship. It was to break away from his father, to break away from his nation. Ibrahim alayhi salam, was he looking for some mightier dalil? Almighty Allah says, rather, وَكَذَلِكَ نُرِي Ibrahim. We had shown Ibrahim alayhi salam, مَلَكُوتَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Malakut here means that in the heavens and in the earth, there are miraculous happenings. Only some people see it, some people are blind to it. Almighty Allah said, we showed Ibrahim alayhi salam the very things me and you see. He saw the happenings of the sky. He saw the happenings on the earth. وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ. That was sufficient for him to become among the people of yaqeen. فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلُ. He looked at the very things that we see. When it became dark and he saw the star, he said, هَذَا رَبِّي. What a beautiful star. Indeed, this is sufficient to be the creator, sustainer, nourisher of man. This was how he spoke to some people in front. He looked at the world around him. For him that was sufficient as a dalil on the wahdaniyat, the oneness of Almighty Allah. Using the things around him, it was miraculous for him. It was a dalil for him, and he could use it as a dalil to explain to others that, can you not see Allah? So he looked at the star and he said, I am sure this must be the sustainer. What a bright star. فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ. But when the star lost its brightness, قَالَ أَلَا أُحِبُّ الْعَافِلِينَ. Then he said to the people he was addressing, that me, I do not like a deity, a god, and Allah, I do not like one that is there for a while and then he disappears. فَلَمَّا رَأَى الْقَمَرَ بَازِغًا. Now it was the moon that was out in its full shine. So he said to the people in front, هَذَا رَبِّي. I am sure this is my sustainer, my nourisher. This is the greatest. Look at that light. فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ. But when it lost its light, قَالَ لَإِن لَمْ يَهْدِنِي رَبِّي. He says, if my Allah does not allow me to remain on the spot, لَأَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الضَّالِّينَ. Then I will also be from those people who fell off the path. How many took the sun as their God? How many took the fire as their God? How many in the world took the cow as the God? How many took different idols as their God? Every one of them saw it was not there. There are times when it is not there. They found its days of power. They found its days of weakness. فَلَمَّا رَأَى الشَّمْسَ بَازِغَةً. And then when he saw the rising sun and the light of the sun, then he said, هَذَا رَبِّي هَذَا أَكْبَرُ. The biggest of all of these, the most strongest and the brightest. فَلَمَّا أَفَلَتْ. But the sun also sets. It also loses its light. then loudly he would say, Ya qawm, inni bari'um mimma tushrikun. I am very far from those things which you have made the partners of Almighty Allah. To see Almighty Allah in the world does not need a new miracle. It needs the eye of the individual. Ibrahim alayhi salam, looking at the world around him, was able to say, Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi. I have turned fully towards that being, alladhi fatara as-samawati wal arda, who has created from nothing the heavens and the earth. Hanifa, I have turned fully towards him. I have nothing to do with shirk. Wahajjahu qawmu. His nation wanted to argue with him. Forget being weak in his iman, loud in his iman. He could argue with them. He needed no bigger miracle. The miracles that we have around Surah An'am was to show that if man wants to see Almighty Allah, then if he has that eye, if he's walking on this path with that sifat of abdiyat, shukr for the gift of Almighty Allah, he will not have to ask for more. He will not have to talk very loudly. He will walk with humility, and everything and anything will be showing him the qudrat of Almighty Allah. At the end of the surah, Almighty Allah speaks about it. Inna Allah faliqul habbi wan nawa. That if man wants to see Almighty Allah, then look at the skies, look at the earth. Looking at the earth, you will find verily Allah is the one, faliqul habbi wan nawa, who takes out the seed from the ground. That weak seed, the strong ground, you yourself wanted to kick and to open it up. Look at when you are digging to bury someone, how much of effort is made just to open up the ground. Ask that seed what power you have within you, that when the time comes out, Almighty Allah says, indeed it is Allah who allows that seed to come from the ground. يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَمُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتِ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. He is the one who gives life from something that looked lifeless. There was an egg, there was nothing happening around the egg, and then from that egg something hit, it cracked, and that living chick came out of it. وَمُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتِ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. And then you see the mother of that chick, when she's giving birth, when she's laying her egg, then again a lifeless thing comes out. The process from the lifeless to get life, and from life to get lifeless, ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهِ. Allah Ta'ala says, that itself is your dalil. فَأَنَّا تُؤْفَكُونَ. So where have you gone blinded? Where are you looking somewhere else? فَالِقُ الْإِصْبَاحِ. Then you look towards the sky. You saw it on the ground when the seed was coming out. Now you look towards the sky. It is dark. And Almighty Allah says that Allah who takes out the light from the darkness. Now morning has come. وَجَعَلَ اللَّيْلَ سَكَنًا. All that Allah who made the night for you full of sukoon. What brought the whole world to say when the night time comes, now everything must just go quiet. Everything must go dull. Everyone must lose their strength. Now everyone got the time. It is 12 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. The mother will say, go to bed now. The child is already feeling tired. What made that system? وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ حُسْبَانًا. Mighty the sun is, mighty the moon is. Almighty Allah says, but keeping them in such a system moving in the world, that hisab can even be done. Man wants to calculate the year. Man wants to calculate the month. He can do the calculations 10 years earlier. That sun will remain on its course. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. In this world, no matter how much you are particular on time, you say, me and my wife, we are never late for an appointment. There will always be one day, because of some traffic, because of some incident, because of some accident, you will not make your appointment. Here the mighty sky, the mighty sun, the mighty moon, Allah Ta'ala's entire system. Almighty Allah says, what an andaza, what a calculation, what a system of the mightiest and the most knowledgeable. وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ النُّجُومِ. It is that Allah who made for you the stars. لِتَهْتَدُوا بِهَا. From the beginning till now, when man would look, he would pick up, this is a certain star, moving in this direction, means I am approaching this place. Looking at that star, فِي ظُلُمَاتِ الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. Whether you are on the waters, whether were you on the land, it was so dark around you, but from so far away that star shone. As that star shone, that became your guide. قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ. Almighty Allah said, you wanted a miracle, you wanted a mu'jiza, ayat, we have explained to you signs upon signs. لِقَوْمِ يَعْلَمُونَ. But it will only help a nation who has knowledge and understanding. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. that Allah who created you from one, فَمُسْتَقَرُّ وَمُسْتَوْدَعُ, and then He gave you two lands. He gave you the land where you were a wadi'at and amanat, that is this land here. We are here for a few days, فَمُسْتَقَرٌ, and then He kept for us another land where we will be permanently. It's called the year after. قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ. Every day you see someone coming in this world, going from this world. Where are they going? Everything is happening by the will of Allah. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, that Allah who sent from the skies water. فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ, that water had no color in it. That water had no ingredient in it. That water had no different gadgets in it. It was that same water. As it hit the ground, Almighty Allah says, it was us. Who else was it? فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ, it was us. With that water, we took out نَبَاتَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, the sprouts of everything. We took out everything from the ground. فَأَخْرَجْنَا مِنْهُ خَضِرًا, and from that sprout now we took out that green stalk. As it started coming higher, نُخْرِجُ مِنْهُ حَبًّا مُتَرَاكِبًا, it was the beginning one seed. Then in that stalk that was now coming out, there were going to be many seeds. Each seed was going to have now the ability to become another plant. And like this, farms and farms would be created from what? From that one seed that started the whole thing. It was one seed, Nabi Adam alayhi salam, and we see the world around us. One Allah Tabarak Ta'ala says, you yourself don't need to think of Adam alayhi salam. Look at that seed that you yourself put in the ground, and it became a farm for you. وَمِنَ النَّخْلِ مِنْ طَلْعِهَا قِنْوَانٌ دَانِيَةٌ. Almighty Allah says, look at the date palm. The Arabs understood that very well. That طَلْعِهَا was also that shoot that came out. How small it was at the beginning. قِنْوَانٌ دَانِيَةٌ. From that small and that weak shoot that came out. Now we are finding قِنْوَانٌ دَانِيَةٌ. That kajur, if you ever saw the date palm, you will see how it hangs. Daniya means hanging. You will see that cluster of dates, heavy it is, and it is hanging towards the ground. That very heavy cluster, it came out also from that one week's shoot. وَجَنَّاتٍ مِّنْ أَعْنَابٍ. Walk around and you will see gardens of grapes. وَالزَّيْتُونَ, and olives. وَالرُّمَّانِ, pomegranates. مُشْتَبِهُ وَغَيْرَ مُتَشَابِهِ. Some of them resemble the others in looks, but in taste they are different. Some of them even look different from the others. انظروا إلى ثمره. Almighty Allah says, now look at the fruits. إذا أسمر, when they start ripening. وينعي, now they are ready for you. إن في ذلكم لآيات لقوم يؤمنون. For the people of Iman, Almighty Allah says, miracles upon miracles, signs upon signs. There's no need for you to ask for a sign. You have to start looking and you will see enough signs. However, وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ شُرَكَاءَ الْجِنَّةِ. Almighty Allah now speaks about these very signs which were meant as mu'jiza, which were meant as miracle, which were meant as the dalail, the proofs of the qudrat of Almighty Allah. Suratul An'am has its name because of this here. These very things which were supposed to bring man towards Almighty Allah. If man walks on this path with a holier than thou attitude, with I am deserving of this path, I have inherited this path, I am the boss of this path, then he will become blind, oblivious to all of these signs. He will not see anything. He will always have doubt of his Allah. That is one. And worse than that man is that individual who takes the shayateen. He takes them as his teacher. And then they show him these very signs which was supposed to introduce him to his Allah, make him fall in love with his Allah. But when he could not use these signs for what they were meant, it gets used for the opposite. The mushrikeen used these very things to make shirk with Almighty Allah. The very animal that came in front of them from Allah, they attributed it to someone besides Allah. That person who has taken the shayateen, that person who has taken the jinn as his teacher, either directly or indirectly, which we will speak about inshallah in detail, that person will see every sign of Allah. But instead of going closer to Almighty Allah, what happened in this era of what is called modern science, an era that started with the Renaissance? They call it Renaissance, which means a rebirth. What was this Renaissance? Was it something good for the world? They call it the era of progress, the era of the breakthrough of technology. But did it help religion in any way? It came to break religion from the beginning till the end. In the 1500, the first word of Renaissance was heard. It sounded so nice. It sounded so good. It had the meaning from darkness into light, from ignorance into knowledge. That word was so good. It really meant away from religion now to something which is not religion. Away from an Allah to something which is not an Allah. Away from reality into the worship of the fire. But what lovely words were used. That was the Renaissance. As it rose in the lands of Europe, there was a church which was mighty and powerful. Everyone was under the church, despite the church teaching everything wrong. But morality was still in the church. Women would not come out of their houses with their hair uncovered. There was no movies and there was no plays. A girl would never take part even if a play had to be done. It was against their morals. They understood that they got someone to love after. They looked and they said, this is the Holy Mary. How she looked, they looked. Even if a boy and girl were in love, before marriage they would never think of doing anything. There was a level of respect amongst people. The church was wrong, but it still had what is called kept morality in place. The Renaissance entered. It broke through the church. Every teaching of the church was shown to be a lie, was shown to be backward, was shown to be against progress. There was no issue really with Islam, because this was confined to the lands of Europe. But it was not going to remain there. It was now going to start spreading its dirty fangs all over. By the 1700, the first words of the Renaissance started in the lands of the Muslims. In Turkey, scholars were now coming from the European lands, loudly proclaiming that if you want to be mighty now in battle, we will have to learn from them. When the devil and the people of the devil became the teachers of man, then everything collapsed to the ground. Before this, Islam was the teacher, and Europe came to Islam to learn. Islam also propagated and promoted religion. But in what Islam taught them, when it taught them the sciences, when it taught them engineering, when it taught them building, Islam did not lie. When Europe through the Renaissance was going to teach the world, they would speak truth and they would speak a lot of lies. Whatever would push forward their view of a satanic world, it would start with atheism and it would push towards Satanism. Atheism would be loud, Satanism would be subtle. It was a maqsad of this Renaissance. The basis of it was the worship of the shayateen. Rebirth really meant the rebirth of an empire of the devil, which once upon a time was there and Islam came and destroyed it. They call it the mighty Persian Empire. Masters of medicine, masters of the understanding of the skies, masters of things that are around in the world, what we call today geography. It was the mighty Persian Empire. Islam entered and brought it to the ground. Renaissance was a rebirth where the satanic world would speak loudly and everyone will be quiet. In the 1700s, it started filtering into the lands of Islam. Two words were made at that time. One was An-Nahda, the standing. One was Al-Ba'ath, what we today call the Ba'ath Party. Both of it meant the Renaissance, a rebirth. And as it started, then it was found a modern Islam was created. Modern in the understanding of the skies, modern in the understanding of the earth. When your teacher is the devil and the system of the devil, then a modern science was created. A modern science created universities. It created an advancement in many sciences. But we found whoever went to study this, whoever went looking into it, this is what the surah will now explain. The very things which were meant to be the dalail of the qudrat of Almighty Allah, to invite towards the oneness of Almighty Allah. When your teacher is the shayateen and a system set up by the shayateen, then that eye which is supposed to see Allah in everything becomes such a faulty eye that it loses sight of Almighty Allah in everything. The tongue becomes so filthy that it denies Almighty Allah. The mind becomes so dirty that it doubts in everything Almighty Allah. Now the eye and the heart and the mind will look at the Quran, look at verse upon verse, and it will say, but this verse is not what science is saying. This verse is not what science. when science would become a god, then every qudrat, every dalil of the power of Almighty Allah, instead of bringing man closer to his Allah, was going to now take man away from Almighty Allah. That is why that scientist would stand up as an atheist. That boy who would come out of the university would come out with doubts. They created a system in the world. When the shayateen are your teachers, Almighty Allah says, وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ شُرَكَاءَ. They made for Allah partners. Who they decided to make? Al-Jinnah. They decided to make the jinn partners with Almighty Allah. What did the jinn do? What was the power of the jinn? وَخَلَقَهُمْ. Whereas Almighty Allah was the one who created the jinn also. وَخَرَقُوا لَهُ بَنِينَ وَبَنَاتٍ. They established for Almighty Allah sons and daughters. بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Subhanahu. Pure is Almighty Allah. وَتَعَالَى عَمَّا يَصِفُونَ. Very high from what they are saying and attributing. بَدِيعُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Creator of the heavens and earth, without any misal before it, without any example. أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ وَلَدٍ. Wherefore does Allah will there ever be a son? وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ صَاحِبًا. He had no companion. He has no wife. وَخَلَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. He is the creator of everything. He is aware of everything. ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ. Thus then is your Allah. لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ. None but Him. خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Creator of everything. فَعْبُدُوا. O man, fall in the worship of this Allah. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَكِيلٍ. And Almighty Allah is the one in charge. Almighty Allah is the one looking after. Allah is the one helping. Allah is in charge of every single thing. He's in charge of me. He's in charge of you. The eye that Almighty Allah gave us, whatever we want to see, we will see with this eye, the dalail of the qudrat of Almighty Allah. لَا تُدْرِكُهُ الْأَبْصَارِ. Remember, no eye has the power to see Almighty Allah in totality, to encompass the Zat of Almighty Allah. وَهُوَ يُدْرِكُ الْأَبْصَارِ. That is the power of Almighty Allah, that His nazar, His gaze is on the eye of the people of the world. وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. But our eye does not have the ability to encompass the being of Almighty Allah. But in this eye, Almighty Allah indeed placed that qudrat, that we can see anything and everything around us in this world, even when the eye is closed. Hazrat Maulana Abdul Hamid Sahib Damat Barakatuh many a time would say, so unique Almighty Allah made His qudrat, that when your eye is open, whatever you're seeing is a dalil of the qudrat of Allah. When your eye is closed, that darkness where you are not seeing anything, that also is a dalil of the qudrat of Almighty Allah. قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ بَصَائِرُ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ. Basair from Basira. Almighty Allah says, indeed, so much has come to you from your Allah. Basira, which is more than sufficient for you to see. فَمَنْ أَبْصَرَ فَلِنَفْسِ. The one who sees it, it is only going to benefit him. وَمَنْ عَمِيَ. The one who remained blind, فَعَلَيْهَا. It will be harmful, it will be detrimental to him. وَمَا أَنَا عَلَيْكُمْ بِحَفِيظٍ. The Nabi of Allah was to say to the people that I am not a Nigran, I have not come to force anyone to do anything. وَكَذَلِكَ نُصَرِّفُ الْآيَاتِ. Almighty Allah says, in this manner, we spread out our signs in front. Those that want to see it will see it. Those that want to be blind will be blind. In the end of Surah An'am, inshallah we will discuss tomorrow, Almighty Allah will show what happens when this eye does not see what it's supposed to see. What happens when the shayateen and the jinn becomes the teacher? Then how they use these very things to make man hate Almighty Allah, to turn man away from Allah, to make man doubt Allah. Now he will stand up, and that very dalil, which was the dalil of the oneness of Allah, which supposed to bring his head on the ground in sajda, he uses that very thing to try and show, see, it was one big bang, that's how it happened. See, it was that man came from a monkey, that's how it happens. Every sentence he says is so filthy, it is so dirty, it is just to create doubt, it is filled with lie. But because he was the teacher, man normally respects his teacher. He never thinks my teacher can ever lie. The system that we are living in the world, it is called one of the biggest lies that the world has ever seen. The scientific world that we have, the world of technology, the world of the media, it is one big lie. That man who will think about it properly, how much they have lied already, how much they do lie, how much they will continue lying. But my Allah has never lied. My Allah will never lie. My Allah is the most truthful. I do not have any doubt on what my Allah has said. But with regards to what they say, they are not my teacher. They are not my benefactor. They have created or they have manufactured many things around. The world has been made for me. So I will use it, I will purchase it. But I will never fall in love. I will never fall in awe. And I will never fall headlong that whatever they say is the truth. Whatever comes from their tongues, whatever comes from their pens, whatever pictures they show around, and they call this is the tahqiq, the teachings of science. I will look at it with the eye of shak. I will say it's a theory, nothing is proven. I will not believe what they will call dalail, because they are a group that has lied more than enough. I will hold my full yaqeen on the qudrat of Almighty Allah. With the very small eye that I have, it is more than sufficient for me to see Almighty Allah in everything. I don't have to ask for something bigger. May Almighty Allah bless us with that eye. Man absara falinafsi, an eye that wants to see Almighty Allah, it will only be for His benefit. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.